In 2 Corinthians chapter 12, the Apostle Paul asks the Lord 3 different times to remove something out of his life, but it stayed. We have come to call that situation that Paul was praying about his thorn in the flesh. Maybe you're feeling today like you've prayed a prayer to God and he hasn't answered it the way that you would have liked him to. It leaves you feeling terrible, leaves you feeling lonely, leaves you feeling deserted. It's a real feeling. In 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 9, it makes it clear that God responded to the apostles' prayer by saying, "No, I'm not going to answer your prayer the way that you want me to answer it, but my grace is sufficient for you. For my grace will come to your point of need, and I will use your weakness and my grace to let people see my grace is sufficient for you. It's enough. It's enough." I don't like to see people hurting. I don't like to see people disappointed. I have prayed many a prayer, and I've seen many of those prayers answered. And I thank God for every one of those prayers that were answered the way that I prayed God to answer them. But I've also prayed prayers that seemed like God was on a vacation when I prayed them. Seemed like nothing changed. Seemed like I was asking God to show up and do me a favor. And everything stayed the same. And when that happens, you're tempted to think, it sure would boost my faith. It sure would help me to realize stronger about the compassion of God for me individually. You're tempted to give in and say, I don't ask God for very much, but I asked you for this one thing for me, and nothing seemed to change. Hear his words. My grace is sufficient for thee. That means his power, his encouragement, his presence is sufficient to help you endure the hurt or the pain that you're going through. For as you go through it, you're learning by it it's a way to experience the power of God to help you endure, become stronger, and to trust the sovereignty of God. God's got this. Now, it occurred to me that God sometimes is pretty quiet sometimes about what we're praying about. But I believe God hears all of our prayers. And I believe He answers all of our prayers. Sometimes it's a no. Sometimes it's a yes. And there are other times when the timing isn't just right. And later on down the road in your life, you realize, oh, God did answer my prayer. He just didn't do it on my time, but on His. I would encourage you not to fall prey this morning to the temptation to think that God doesn't care because He somehow doesn't show up when you're hurting. God cares very much. He does. He's concerned about you and your personal joys and your personal discouragements. In John 16:24, He said, as of now, you've asked me nothing in my name. Ask largely. Ask and you shall receive, that your joy may be full. Don't stop praying. Don't stop praying. Don't stop believing. Saturate the throne of God with thanksgiving and praise and worship and your prayers, for He cares for you. And not too long ago, I was having one of those moments where I had asked God for something. And it was very obvious from the way it turned out that He had other plans. And I was tempted to think, God, I'm always praying for other people. I'm always trying to encourage other people and bless other people. I sure would have been blessed so much and my faith would have been stimulated so much if He'd have answered this prayer for me the way I wanted it. And this verse in 2 Corinthians 12 came to me. My grace is sufficient for you. And then I began to think of all the prayers that we have prayed to God and He's answered them. So I quickly have to draw myself in and not be disappointed with God. For God has answered prayers all down through my life. Documented answers to prayers. A divine movement of Almighty God that benefited me or somebody in my family or my friends. So I encourage you today, don't lose faith in God even when you're hurting. Don't be tempted to think God doesn't care when you're hurting. and you ask him to remove that hurt out of your life, he may answer you or me, or I. He could answer us the same way that he answered Paul. My grace is sufficient for you. For when you're at your weakest point, I am bringing my strength into your life. My strength is made perfect in your weakness. Be encouraged today. I don't have a clue who this is for. Maybe it's for me. But I want to let you know it's always too soon to quit, to stop praying. And I want to encourage you to believe that God chooses to answer your prayer differently than what you ask. God's not upset or mad at you. He loves you very much. God's got it. There's nothing that you would go through today that didn't somehow pass right through before the hand of God. And God said, that'll be a test. If I say no to that request, that'll be a test for my child. But they'll grow stronger, and they'll learn to trust me with their life. If you're hurting today, I breathe the healing power of Jesus over your life, and I bless you with that. Not necessarily always the healing to change the situation, but the healing of our mind or our heart, where we know God's right, where we say, I love you no matter how you answer this prayer, where you confirm your trust and say, your perfect will be done. To trust him to give you strength and grace to go through your situation. I have the feeling as I'm giving you this right now that someone has asked God for something and you've been disappointed. It didn't work out the way that you wanted it to. God still loves you and God still cares. God is still there for you. Never let anything stop you from praying. Do not be discouraged. Don't quit. God bless you today. Love you. God bless.